Bhakti yogi should push the light air up between the eyebrows and then, blocking the 7 outlets of the life air, he should maintain his aim of going back home, back to Godhead. If he is completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, he should then reach the cerebral whole and give up his material connections, having gone to the Supreme. Purport. The process of giving up all material connections and returning home back to Godhead, the Supreme, is recommended herein. The condition is that one should be completely freed from desire for material enjoyment. There are different grades of material enjoyments in respect to duration of life and sensual gratification. The highest plane of sensual enjoyment for the longest period of life is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 20. All are but material enjoyments, and one should be thoroughly convinced he has no need of such a long duration of life, even in the Brahmaloka planet. He must return home back to Godhead and must not be attracted by any amount of material facilities. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 59, it is said that this sort of material detachment is possible to attain when one is acquainted with the supreme association of life. Param drishva nivartate. One cannot be freed from material attraction unless he has complete understanding of the nature of spiritual life. The propaganda by a certain class of impersonalists that spiritual life is void of all varieties is dangerous propaganda to mislead the living beings into becoming more and more attracted by material enjoyments. As such, persons with a poor fund of knowledge cannot have any conception of the Param, the Supreme. They try to stick to the varieties of material enjoyments, although they may flatter themselves as being Brahman-realized souls. Such less intelligent persons cannot have any conception of the Param as mentioned in this verse, and therefore they cannot reach the Supreme. The devotees have full knowledge of the spiritual world, the personality of Godhead, and his transcendental association in unlimited spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. Herein, Vaikuntha Drishti is mentioned. Vaikuntha and Vaikuntha convey the same import, and only one who has his aim fixed upon that spiritual world and personal association with the Godhead can give up his material connections even while living in the material world. This Param and the Paramdham, mentioned in several places in Bhagavad Gita, are one and the same thing. One who goes to the Paramdham does not return to the material world. This freedom is not possible even by reaching the topmost loka of the material world. And the life air passes through 7 openings, namely 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Generally, it passes through the mouth at the time of an ordinary man's death. But the yogi, as above mentioned, who controls the life air in his own way, generally releases the life air by puncturing the cerebral hole in the head. The yogi therefore blocks up all the above mentioned 7 openings so that the life air will naturally burst forth through the cerebral hole. This is the sure sign of a great devotee's leaving the material connection. Tasma bruvor antaram punayeta niruda sapta yatano napeksha stikva murtardam akunta drishtir nividyamurtam vishriyat param gatha. Thereafter, the bhakti yogi should push the life air up between the eyebrows and then, blocking the 7 outlets of the life air, he should maintain his aim for going back home, back to Godhead. If he is completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, he should then reach the cerebral hole and give up his material connections, having gone to the Supreme. Mukam karoti vachalam pannam mahayati garim yakripatadam manye shri guru dinatharanam. So this is continuing the description of the process of self and God realization, which is followed by the Sat Chakra yogis, who are being described here as bhakti yogis. Although, at the same time, as Prabhupada points out, as I mentioned yesterday in the Bhagavad Gita, this Satchakra Yoga is not so much favored by the Bhakti Yogis. At least we can say it is not very much recommended by Lord Krishna. Although, as we're reading here, a Bhakti Yogi can go back home, back to Godhead, by engaging in this process. So, there, as also mentioned yesterday, there are different types of yoga: jnana, karma, this mystic yoga, and also upasana, as someone mentioned yesterday. That's the somewhat contaminated form of bhakti mixed with jnana and karma. So these different kinds of paths, they're all described as yoga, just as this is being described in yoga here, Satchakra Yoga. But we should understand very carefully what is the ultimate meaning of yoga. Krishna makes this very, very clear in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And he does it in a very interesting and also very precise way. So there's no doubt what Lord Krishna means in Bhagavad Gita when he uses the word yoga. So at the end of the 6th chapter, he says, beginning in the second to the last verse, and he begins that verse by saying something which is very relevant here. Tapasvi vyo iko yogi. So yoga is not to be taken as simply the method of asceticism, tapasya, sense control, and withdrawing the consciousness into the, as described here, into the heart chamber or into this mystic channel in the spine and raising it up through the chakras and all of that. Krishna says a yogi is actually greater than a tapasvi, one who's engaged in austerities. And he says, Jnani yo api natodika. Yoga is not simply mental speculation. It is not to be equated with jnana. A yogi is greater than a jnani. And then he says, karma vyash chariko yogi. And yoga is not to be understood in terms of regulated fruitive activities as found in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, because the yogi is greater than the karma. And then Lord Krishna concludes, he's instructing Arjuna, so tasmat yogi bhava Arjuna. In all cases, you should be a yogi. So this is a little mysterious. Krishna is saying yoga is greater than tapasya or jnana or karma. So in all cases, in other words, whatever path you're engaged in, whether it be this one here we're reading about in the 2nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or another authorized path in the Vedic culture of self-realization, Krishna says, whatever path you're on, in any case, be a yogi. So now what does he mean by that? He makes it very clear in the next verse, which is the last verse of the 6th chapter, which is of course a very famous verse, where he says, Yoginam api sarvesham matkiten antaratmana. There are many kinds of yogis. He begins in this verse by stating, there are many kinds of yogis. But then he gives his opinion of who is the real yogi. And he says, Shraddhavan bhajate yomam sa me yuktattamam. I say, in my opinion, that yogi who is yogi yukta, this is a phrase which appears in many places in the Bhagavad Gita. Yogi yukta means perfectly fixed up in yoga. So I say that the yogi who is yoga yukta is he who is Shraddhavan, full of faith. He's full of faith, love, devotion, and Bhajate Yoma. He's always engaged in worshipping me. So this is Krishna's definition of yoga, or yogi. It is the devotee. The devotee is the yogi. And when Krishna tells Arjuna, Tasmat yogi bhava Arjuna, in all cases, in all circumstances, whatever duties you're performing, be a yogi. He's telling Arjuna, be a devotee. So, this is the essence, actually. Essence of yoga is devotional service. Bhakti, bhakti yoga. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada explains that the most advanced form, or the topmost development of yoga is bhakti yoga. Pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So, this bhakti can be attained in any of the yoga systems, according to Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. If one is on the karma path, engaging in regulated duties as prescribed by the Vedas, then Krishna, he explains to Arjuna that yes, this karma kanda follower, he can become a pure devotee if yat karoshi yadashnasi yat chohoshi yat tapashashi kaunteya tat karushma marapana. If whatever he's doing, yat karoshi, karoshi is related to the word karma, means duties or activities. So whatever he's doing, whatever he's eating, whatever he offers, whatever he gives away, whatever austerities he may perform along his path, he should do all of that for me. So there's a very nice junction, or a very nice possibility of joining Bhakti Yoga from the karma path. You just have to do those duties. They're all prescribed in the Vedas. Wonderful. They're all authorized. But do them for Krishna. And as far as the jnani is concerned, so bahunam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyante vasudeva savarmiti samahatma sadhuram. Sri Krishna says, among the jnanis who take birth again and again and again in pursuing perfection in their yoga system. So the one among all these jnanis who is a Mahatma, who is actually a great soul, who has actually attained complete spiritual realization, is he who has seen Vasudeva, Krishna, everywhere. Vasudeva, Savanamite. He knows that everything is ultimately Krishna. So that's the conclusion of his search for knowledge. So this is another description of a bhakti yogi. But he's come to bhakti from the jnana path. And then as far as Upasana Kanda, Sri Krishna says, Yepi anya devata bhakta yajanti shariranvita. So there are many worshippers of different gods. Anyata deva, devata anya. Anya means other. So other of the many different gods. So, what is their position? Krishna says, they're actually worshipping me. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. They're actually engaged in worshipping me, but they're following an improper path. Avidipurvaka uses this phrase. It means they're worshipping me, but it's in a wrong way. So they have to take the right way. That means, as we were explaining yesterday, Krishna's final instruction in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharma Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam. You can just give up all these other indirect methods and just surrender unto me. So, why do they take up these indirect methods? It's because they're not properly informed, or they do not properly understand what is the Purushartha that we mentioned yesterday, the real goal of life. They take Purushartha, the real goal of human life, to be Dharma, Artha, Kam, Moksha. So in this realm, then there are these different systems of yoga, different systems of elevation. But when one's mind becomes clear, you see, because that's actually the real point. You see, if one is taking up some path lesser than, or not coming up to the standard of complete surrender to Krishna, then it's to be understood he's taking up that path because of some attachment, some impurity in the heart and in the mind. So he's confused as to what is the goal of life. So that's all right that the Vedas say you follow according to your conditioning, according to your tendency for sense gratification. There is a path for you to follow. But the whole point of that path is that the mind becomes a little cleared up. You see, one develops determination, concentration, deeper understanding of the scriptures. And gradually he sees, just like Lord Kapila, he explains in his teachings in the third canto. Gradually sinking down. And everything else in material existence. So Lord Kapila Dev, he explains, Sattva Maika Manaso. So when the mind, when the consciousness comes up to the mode of goodness, and all of these different yoga systems, they bring us up to the mode of goodness eventually. So Sattva Maika Manaso Vritti Svabhaviti Tu Yaha. Then in that state one gradually starts to understand his own nature. Spiritual nature. Svabhava means your own nature. And what is that nature? Animita Bhagavati. That I'm a servant of Bhagavan, Krishna. So therefore in that purified state, he comes to the conclusion, Bhakti Siddhir Gariyasi. That Bhakti, full surrender, as we've explained, this is Krishna's definition. Full surrender, full devotion to Krishna. That is higher than any other siddhi or perfection. In karma yoga you get different siddhis, in jnana you get siddhis, in mystic yoga you get siddhis, in upasana kanda you get siddhis. It just means perfections. The goals that you set your mind at. So you can get different goals, that's a fact. But when one's mind becomes clear, purified, then he realizes bhakti siddhi garis. Above, over and above all these different goals, there is pure devotional service to Sri Krishna. That is the supreme. So, therefore Krishna tells Arjuna, don't become confused about these apparently different paths of yoga. Like Srila Prabhupada gave a nice example that if you have $1 million, then all of your $10, $20, $50 problems are automatically solved. But if you don't have any money, then you have so many little nagging problems that require you to raise, and you have to raise a little for this bill, and here's that debt, you have to raise something for that, and this way you go on, wasting all your energy. So, actually, when one attains bhakti, then he's accomplished everything in yoga. So, he need not become bewildered, just like if we read this description of this Sat Chakra Yoga system. And we need not become bewildered that, oh, are we missing something in our practice of devotional service in this Hare Krishna movement? Because here it seems very mystical, raising of the prana, you see, raising of the consciousness through the chakras and these different realizations, and then finally coming up to the Brahmarandra, and it says that we should punch a hole through the top of our head and leave our body like that. So why aren't we doing this? Why isn't this happening? Maybe something's lacking. No, don't become bewildered. Because Srila Prabhupada explains in his Krishna book, prayers to the personified Vedas. That since yoga really means bhakti, then we simply use this body as a temple of Krishna. Krishna resides within this body as Paramatma. So in the morning we mark this body with the signs of the tilak, and we chant the mantra, the name of Lord Vishnu. So here we have a description of this Agya Chakra. Thereafter the Bhakti Yogi should push the light there up between the eyebrows. So every morning we're marking the space between the eyebrows with tilak, and we chant Om Keshavaya Namaha. So this place and these other places on the body, these chakras and these other places where the tilak marks are put, they have their importance in the yoga system, but they're approached in different ways. In this Satchakra yoga, there's this mystic process which is very difficult to perform. But since the essence is bhakti, since the whole point is transform this body into a temple of Vishnu, so that it can be easily accomplished by the devotional process of marking the body with tilak, which reminds us and reminds others of the Lord, and sanctifying that place by chanting the Lord's holy name. So, you see, we wear 13 tilaks on our body, and they correspond. Of course, there's more than 6. Chakra means 6 chakras, but each one of those chakras is also marked by a tilak sign, and the Brahmarandra on the top is marked. So all these places are sanctified. So that whole the purpose of the mystic yoga system is easily accomplished in Bhakti Yoga. And similarly, this in the Satchakra yoga system, mystic yoga system, they're trying to realize by their meditation the Virat Rupa. This is explained here in this chapter and other places in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The yogis, they meditate on the Virat Rupa, which is manifest as the universal form. It's equivalent also, 5th canto says, to this Sushumna chakra we mentioned yesterday. So this Virat Rupa is actually said to be an imaginary form. So whose imagination is that? It's described in the 3rd canto. It is the imagination of Chiradakshay Vishnu. He's contemplating within his mind this mystic form, Virat Rupa. And Lord Brahma, when he becomes perfect in his meditation at the beginning of existence, then he visualizes, because he's a devotee of the Lord. So he comes up to the level of Krishna consciousness, and then this mystical form, this subtle form of the universe, which is kept within the mind of Chiradakshay Vishnu, it becomes revealed to him. So from this becomes his scheme, his blueprint for manifesting the gross universal form, the form of solid matter, so to speak. So it's existing within the mind of Chiradakshay Vishnu in its subtle form. So therefore it is, in that way it is identifiable with the body of Lord Vishnu, as described in the Shastras. So the yogis, this is the way they approach the form of the Lord. They try to visualize this very mysterious, mystical, universal form. And then in this way, then gradually they're associating with Lord Vishnu, with Lord Paramatma. And they can in the end realize his transcendental spiritual form. But this is, of course, a very involved process, very difficult, very you see. Very mystical, requiring so much discipline of the consciousness. So the Bhakti Yogi, as far as the form of the Lord, there on the altar, we see the transcendental form of the Lord immediately. Anybody can see. Anybody walking in the door can come in and see this form as He's revealed Himself on the altar. To, moreover, not just that we can see Him. In this verse, yes, drishti, akunta drishti, this phrase is used, akunta drishti. So drishti means to see. So these mystic yogis, they want to see, that's their main goal, to see, akunta drishti, to see the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If they attain that, then they think they're perfect in yoga. But this deity worship is beyond that. Because not only are we seeing, but we're able to serve. So that's actually the real meaning of Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha is the place where the devotees eternally serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These mystic yogis, they can come to the platform of seeing the Lord, but still, if they want to actually be fixed beyond the chance of falling down, then they have to engage in devotional service. So that's immediately there in the Bhakti Yogi system. So Krishna therefore says, don't become confused, O Arjuna. Naite, Shiti, Patajana, Yogi Muyati Kashtana. There are these different paths of yoga, but don't become bewildered by them. Tasmat Sareshu Kaleshu Yoga Yukta Bhavarjana. You just always be situated in pure devotion. And then there's never any cause for confusion. So, yes, the confusion comes from Maya. And the fact that there are even these different detours. The yoga path is one. It's actually the path of pure bhakti. But there are detours along the way, just like on the road, the straight, narrow path. You have these turnoffs, like on the autobahn, the highway. You have these turnoffs where you can get off. The main, they call these highways like Stockholm, Göteborg highway. Sometimes they give them that name to show that this road goes from this city to this city. So that's the main idea of this road, to go from this place to that place. It'll get you that far. But along the way, there's so many turnoffs. For this village, that village, this town, that place. So you can turn off if you like, and then you can get back on after some time enjoying this place or that place. Then you can continue on your way. So karma, jnana, mystic yoga, and so on, they can be compared to that. Exits, you see, rest stops, where you can get off and gratify some desire that you're maintaining in your heart. And then when you're done with that, hopefully, you can get back on and continue on your way. But this is concession to Maya. And Maya, once she has her foot in the door, she can create lots of confusion. So therefore, out of these different yoga systems, then there has come different philosophies which actually preach that detour is the end goal. That you have your Karma Mimamsa philosophy, which coming from Jaimini, he's preaching that Karma Kanda, the higher planets, that's it. That's the goal. Don't think of anything else. And then you have the Jnana Kanda, and there are such philosophers like Ashtavakra Muni, and in more recent times, Shankaracharya. So they teach philosophies that negation, impersonal Brahma, which is the ultimate in the jnana exercise. That's the ultimate goal. And then you have Patanjali Muni, who's saying the Ashtanga Yoga system, mystic powers and so on, that's the goal. So people then following the path of yoga, if they have these materialistic attachments in their heart, bhukti, sense gratification, mukti, liberation, or siddhi, mystic powers, so they're offered these detours, but they can get trapped by accepting some bogus philosophy which has been concocted to justify just staying at this detour, not continuing on. So it's dangerous. So therefore Krishna says, don't become bewildered. Just be a yoga yukta, a perfectly situated yogi by engaging in pure devotional service. Otherwise, there's danger of falling down. In these lower yoga systems, you see, what's going on is because of these attachments in the heart. So they're struggling with the material energy in different ways. By karma, by jnana, by mysticism. They have some plan for conquering material nature, for becoming the master of material nature, and they hope this yoga system, this system of elevation, will help them do it. But in their struggle to conquer material nature, there's every chance that they will become defeated, completely defeated by material nature. There's one story written by this English author, Arthur Conan Doyle. He wrote the Sherlock Holmes mysteries. So one of these mysteries is called The Adventure of the Creeping Man. So there was a particular one doctor, old man. So, actually Professor Pressbury was his name. So, he's a very old man, and he fell in love with some young girl. So, the mystery centered around, he's known to be a professor, a very respectable gentleman, very intelligent, very learned. And yet, and everyone knows he's trying to win the affections of this young girl. But the whole mystery comes out that he's discovered he's creeping around on the London rooftops at night. You know, very strange state of consciousness. So Sherlock Holmes is called in to solve this. Why is Professor Pressbury, why is he going out at night and climbing up on the rooftops and jumping around and acting very strange? Such a respectable old man. So then Sherlock Holmes investigates, and he finds out that because he's in love with this young girl, and the young girl is not very much inclined to him because he's so old. So he was experimenting, injecting himself with some serum taken from monkeys. He was thinking that this monkey serum will give him young life. So this is why he ended up on the rooftop. Because he fell into monkey consciousness. So anyway, this is a kind of ridiculous story. But what's interesting is that Sherlock Holmes, at the end of the story, after he solved this case, he talks with Dr. Watson and gives his realizations. So it's very interesting. He says that those who attempt to overcome nature by their their science investigation, so on like that, they're in danger of being overthrown by nature and giving up. He actually says giving up their humanity and becoming animals. He makes this point. So that's actually very applicable to this endeavor of elevation through the yoga system. As we explained yesterday, yoga system, it is a kind of science, just like now we have science, and their purpose also is elevation. But as long as there's this material attachment, and then the science, the purpose of the science, which is actually meant for going back home, back to Godhead, this Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita himself, in the 15th chapter, Vadais chasarya aham veda. If you take the meaning of the word Veda to mean knowledge or science, then Krishna is saying, by this scientific process, I am to be known. That is the goal. So by science or yoga, the actual purpose of this elevation is for realizing Krishna. But if there are material attachments in the heart, then one becomes diverted from that goal and is trying to lord it over material nature instead of. And then by this effort, one is in danger of ending up like Professor Presbury, monkey life. As a matter of fact, these yogis, there is a comparison made in the Shastra between these mystic yogis and these ascetic sannyasis to monkeys, because they may go naked, they live in the forest, they eat fruits, you see. So there are similarities. And if such yogi or sannyasi, if he's using his facility as yogi simply for sense gratification, that becomes the ultimate end of it. And then he's called Markata Vairagi. He's a monkey sannyasi, a monkey renunciate. And just like monkeys, he may also have a big horde of lady friends following him around. Srila Prabhupada said in India that has become the fashion. Cheater and the cheated. The so-called renunciate in his saffron robe goes to some riverside and sits and meditates. But his plan is, I want to enjoy some young, beautiful woman. And then there are women who think it's very nice to have a child from a saintly person. So then they go to the river looking for someone like this. So each of them, they have this ulterior motive in the mind. The lady's looking to have a child from a saintly person, so she comes as the, bhakti, full of devotion. And in the meantime, he's anyway looking for sex. So in this way, the relationship is established, but it is simply for sense gratification. So this is very troublesome on the path of advancement. So one should simply take to the pure bhakti yoga system as it is, and not meddle with it. Because it is also possible to misuse, although this is the pure, straightforward, simple path back home, back to Godhead. It is similarly possible to misuse this for ulterior motives. Therefore, just like branching out from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, you have so many Appa Sampradayas. And in these Appa Sampradayas, one sees that the bijas, the seeds for material desire, karma bija, jnana bija, anyabhilashita bija, this is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita. These different bijas in the heart, they grow from the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Instead of the Bhakti Lata bija, the seed of devotion, it's these other things that grow.